Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quick Start using the right button with me, Dalia. Here with me today are my two lovely co-hosts, Manon and Thomas, who will look at the chat for me and help answer your questions. In this session, I will give you an overview over the right button. Since this is a quick start session, in other words, a session for people who are completely new to Sudowrite, we'll be proceeding slowly and take things step by step. You will learn how to use auto and guided write to write your story and overcome writer's block, and also get some background knowledge how everything functions. And I'll also answer all the questions you might have. This session will be divided into two parts. We start with a short lecture portion where we'll cover the essentials of how write works, what you can do with the write settings, and the differences between auto write, guided write, and tone shift. After this, we'll have a live walkthrough of my approach to the right button in action. And at the end, we'll hopefully have 10 minutes for your questions and my answers. So before we jump in a bit about the power of the right button, I decided to host this session since the right button often doesn't get enough attention. Since there's a lot of talk about the chapter generator and generating beats. But since I'm a planner, that's not really a way to work that works for me. While I like to have some planning, I don't enjoy outlining every detail that would be necessary to use chapter generator properly. Which is the reason that I'm really happy that I can use the right button, since the chapter generator always was too restrictive for me. So the right button is great for pantsers like me, since you can just start writing in a very flexible way and you just see where the story leads you without having to have detailed beats in advance or any idea where you're heading. I mean, it's helpful to know a little bit, but you just follow your gut. You don't need an outline. But if you're someone who loves planning, just really passionate plotter, you can also use the right button. It's connected to the story Bible, so it knows all the things that are to know about your story and you have put into the story Bible. And it's especially useful for plotters who want just a little AI support to beat writer's block or to fill in gaps between scenes when, for example, the chapter generator skipped something or they realize while they're editing that there's something missing. Overall, it's a very versatile tool that adapts to the different writing styles. Essentially, the right button is a feature that continues your text logically, and it builds on the existing text while maintaining coherence and consistency. If you add it along the way, it's also very good at adapting to your style. The great thing about Write is that it can read up to 20,000 words back for context in your document. This depends a bit which model you are using, but the newer models have really big context windows, but it reads at least 1,000 words back. This is great to keep the writing consistent and to have it really in your voice. But since credit costs depend on how much text the AI reads and writes, a long readback can be costly. So it can help you to preserve credits if you highlight only what's needed for the scene you want to write. And use this highlighted text as the context for the write button. When the story Bible is activated, the write button also considers style, genre, if a chapter summary links the chapter summary, characters, and world building. Here you have to keep in mind that all world building cards are red. And for characters that it's not matched exactly by the name, but if you have a partial name overlap, a card will be pulled in. For example, if you have a character that's called, let's say, John Smith, and you have another character whose name is, I don't know, Jane Smith. If you have a prompt that's asking for John Smith to do something, because both have Smith in their names, they would both be pulled in. To preserve credits and to make sure that only the right information is read, it's very helpful to go through your cards and to hide all the information from the AI that's not strictly necessary for this scene. That's also true if you have any spoilers or general things that a character shouldn't be knowing at this point in the story, that it's better to hide it to make sure that the AI doesn't accidentally slip it in. So now that we have all the basics covered, let's switch over to Sudowrite and take a look at the write settings. You find the write button up here. If you click here, you can switch between the different modes and find the write settings here at the bottom. You start at the top with creativity. And in this context, creativity means a bit more like control or creative freedom. And here you can decide how much creative freedom you want to give the AI. Least means it will follow your prompt more closely. It will look at the genre or other context and be closer to what's expected for this genre. While with most creativity, it may come up with stuff that's not really expected. It may not follow your beats or prompts as closely. But in general, it's your own preference how you set this. For the opening, I like to have it at the middle. Later on, I prefer to go to least, or maybe this 25% mark, since I often have a very clear idea what I want to see in the next couple of words. The number of cards here is basically the number of variants of the next text that you want to have generated. You can choose anything between 1 to 6 cards. I usually, when I start out and I'm not so sure yet about the direction, I go usually with 3 cards. If I'm no better what I want, I just settle with 1 card, since it's always a bit of extra work to puzzle everything together if you have several versions of the same prompt. And in the length of cards, you can choose an approximate length of the output, anywhere between 50 words to 500 words, with the caveat that AI is notoriously bad at counting words. So this is only like an approximate. And depending on model, they either tend to go a bit below or a bit over the words you're aiming for. For example, Excellent has the tendency to be a bit to underwrite a bit more, while in my last tests, a model like DeepSeek often writes a bit more than what you ask for. Usually I'm somewhere between 200 and 500 words, depending on the model I'm using. And talking about model, the next little setting you have here is the prose mode. Here you can choose from a lot of different models, starting with the standards here up above: Premium, Excellent, and Basic. These are models that are optimized for writing prose and are overall like the user favorites. Under the Advanced tab, you have older models, newer experimental models. Like here we have some of our retired prose mode models that are older but are still writing reliably. And if there's something new coming, like DeepSeek is added here, or the new Star Canon or Mistral Large. These aren't as refined as the 3 topmost prose modes, but you can still experiment with them and in general get quite good results. And I often get the question, which model is the best for writing? And the answer depends a lot on your style. Personally, I prefer using Excellent because it balances structure and creativity well and writes very close to my personal style, so that I do not have to edit as much. But I also had good results with DeepSeek Instant in my recent testing. So that, since it's also, that hasn't updated yet, it's not free anymore, but it's still, compared to Excellent, it's rather cheapish. Are there any questions so far in the chat?
There is one question, if you want to clear up that one. The writing settings stay the same for the entire project until you change it, or do you have to reset it with each document?
It usually stays the same. Oh, wait. Sorry. It usually stays the same within a project, but it sometimes happens. I'm not sure if there's like some deeper reason that I haven't realized yet. Maybe since I'm switching browsers a lot and devices, that I come back and something in here has reset, but that's like happening maybe once a month. So I usually, before I start my writing session of the day, just check if everything is as I left it off. And 95% of the time it is the same as I left it off. But since I just want to make sure that there are no like sudden unexpected changes, I prefer to check this at the beginning of my writing sessions.
Mm-hmm. So I guess
maybe I'm just a bit paranoid.
Mm-hmm. So like Thomas says, when you actually shut down Sudowrite and you have to log in, I think that's one of the reset of the right button. If you work on
that's possible
without logging off, it should stay the same that you put it on. Or if you start a brand new project, it's going to be reset to the original default.
Yeah, I think it's possible that this occurs whenever I log out on a different device. I'm always logged in on this device, but sometimes I'm secretly writing at work, so do not tell my boss. Okay, if there are no further questions, I would go over the last bit of the settings here, the key details box. Key details gives you the...
Someone is asking, he says that he did not understand the prose mode setting.
Yes, here in the prose mode, you essentially... Oh, there's a nice little explanation here. Yes, you basically choose a model that is used in the when you're using the write button. In Sudowrite, you have not just one main model, you have several models to choose from, and they all have different strengths and prices. For example, premium is, as the name suggests, like really top-notch quality, but it's also very expensive comparably. And then you have basic, which still gives you good prose quality and follows instructions well and is comparably cheap. And all prose modes have a little bit of a different voice just by themselves. So I would also, if you're new to Sudowrite, I would advise you to try out every model and see which style suits you the best. First, for this ones, we have little writing samples so that you can read through this to get a feeling how the prose would sound. But sadly, we don't have this for the advanced models, but we at least have some information here about the prose quality, how it follows instructions, how unfiltered it is, which may be relevant depending on the genre we're writing in, and how costly it is, essentially. Did this answer your question?
I think so.
Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, then let's pick a prose mode for today. Any preferences? Not that I'm currently here, so we can just try something. I haven't worked with Mistral Large yet. Oh, but yeah, DeepSeek. Let's take a look at this one. So far, in my tests, it gave pretty good quality for not that much credits. So we'll be trying this out today. But back to our key details. This box, as this little note says, only works in auto mode. And here you can put in, there used to be some little explanation text. Weird. But in general, you can put in this box any context or instructions up to 400 characters to guide or to write a little bit. This is good for information about the POV you're writing in, the genre you're writing in, or the general kind of scene you're expecting. And it helps to guide or to write a little bit. If you do not want to use, oh, now it's back. Now the little description is here. Yeah, exactly. What is important about your story? This was, in my opinion, more important when the right button didn't access Storybible yet, since now you can basically put all the details you want in style, genre, characters, and world building, or the outline. But it is also helpful as some extra little nudge to reinforce the stuff that's most important about the scene that you want to write. Now that we took a look at our settings, let's just quickly go over the differences between those three modes. Auto-write in general just continues your story logically based on context and the information it gets from outline, world building, characters, genre style, and the key details. Guided write allows you to provide instructions which is also limited to 400 characters to guide the AI a bit more granularly in which direction you want to move. And 400 words arguably aren't, not words, I wish that were 400 words. 400 characters arguably aren't that much. But since it also looks at the outline, if the prompt isn't detailed enough, the AI will look at the chapter summary to still stay on track with the story. The third option up here is tone shift, which you can use similarly to auto-write and to change the current tone of the story. Like you have a romantic scene that should shift to something more ominous. You can do this with tone shift. But I personally prefer to just use guide write for this, as it allows me more control of the writing. Okay, this was the most important stuff from our lecture part. Are there any questions before we jump into our example project and see how write works in action?
The chat is clear, but maybe someone will put something soon.
Yeah.
When you start generating cards, will you show them how to pick out their favorite ones?
Oh, yes. We'll go over this once we're at this. So, since there are no questions, we will now jump into our little example project and continue working with the story we set up during last week's introduction to Storybible, which is called Cupid's Fake Date. And it's about a young woman named Josie, who is a hopeless romantic and gets dumped a week before Valentine's Day. And she panics a bit because she had already promised her family that she would bring a date to their annually Valentine-themed dinner party. But thankfully, her nosy neighbor, Cal, a serial heartbreaker, offers to play the part. But the fake date starts to feel suspiciously real, leaving them both questioning what's been in front of them all along. And for this story, I thought I'd leave it up to you if what part of the story we start writing first. Chapter 1? Okay, one word for chapter 1. Nosy neighbor or sugar-free stalker? It's a bit nosy. But okay, since we have one vote for chapter 1, we will start with Josie's romantic world, where she prepares everything for a romantic date with her, at that time, boyfriend, Eric. And yeah, I will go back to this here because it's romantic and not very ominous. So that might be an interesting way to start a romantic comedy, indeed. Yeah, if I start a new chapter, oh, Thomas, I just saw you raised your hand.
Deirdre points out you have ominous chosen as a tone.
I just switched this off to back to auto-write so that we don't get a story that's more like feeling like a stalker romance maybe. But thanks for pointing that out. But back to getting our little opening. When I use auto-write to start my chapter, I prefer to have the settings on something like 50% to give it a bit more creative freedom, which may result in the AI skipping parts of the chapter summary and picking the bits of the chapter that are most interesting to hook the reader. And if in that case something important would be skipped, I would go on and reshuffle the contents a little bit. I'd like to see what what auto-write comes up with when I just give it a bit freer reins. And with DeepSeek, I honestly don't know how good it will work with my prompts. But that's also something to learn about AI, is that experimentation is key, and prompt that works well with one model may not work that well with another. And since AI often changes, at least sometimes prompts stop working altogether. But in that way, working with AI is almost always a great learning experience. But let's start here with key details. I usually put in here the POV I want. In this case, I double check the style, what information we have in there, so that there's nothing that's contradicting itself. Since style is the last thing that's being read, in this case, I would say choose Josie's POV. And Manon just pointed something out to me that I totally forgot. I wanted to share a document with you. And oh, I'm not sending this to the chat. Thanks for pointing this out. In this document, mass. Awesome. Thanks you. Anyway, in this document, I have basically everything I'm talking about for you to read afterwards. And we'll also later on link the results of our experimenting. But back to Josie. Aside from this little information about Josie's POV, I will also add a little instruction. Oops, the reader. And in general, there's not a I think it's not really necessary to put everything in brackets. It's just helpful for me to see the difference between like it's meta instructions and actual context stuff that I give to the AI if I just format it a little bit differently. But now we have this all set up. And since this is linked to the first chapter summary, which is quite detailed since I always use a prompt to rewrite the summary to be a bit more, a bit longer and have more details about the characters that are important and the style and genre. Since all this will be read by Sudowrite, it should know quite well what kind of story I'm expecting. Just to make it a bit more readable for you, I will increase this text size. Is this good for you and your devices? Since I noticed I had it on the size that's good for me. Awesome. And just go here. And we just click there. And here in the history, our little card will pop up. Or cards, it should be 3. DeepSeek, I think we chose V3 is a bit slower because it thinks a lot. So it may take some time until we have our 250 words. Oh, but it's getting some momentum. Okay, Josie. Let's see. Oh. it's finished. And let's make sure. I think I asked for 250 words and got quite close with 240, 255, and 200, yeah, 33 is still okay. Now let's see. We have Josie stood in the center of her apartment, surveying the scene with a satisfied smile. The room was a symphony of romance. Okay, that's a little bit symphony. And on the other hand, it's supposed to be a little cliche. Candles flicker on every surface, rose petals scattered artfully across the floor, and the soft strains of their song, playing in the background. She adjusted the angle of a heart-shaped pillow on the couch, then stepped back to admire her handiwork. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Okay, that's not bad, actually. Okay. The next one. The key turned the lock, and Josie's heart leaped into her throat. She stood in the center of the apartment, surrounded by a sea of flickering candles, rose petals, and the faint hum of a love song, playing softly in the background. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down the skirt of her red dress, the one he always said made her look like a movie star. This was it, the moment she'd been dreaming of for months, no, years. The moment he'd drop to one knee, pull out that velvet box she'd accidentally found in his dresser last week, and ask her to spend forever with him. Okay. Yeah, that one starts off well, but it doesn't really follow the plot as well. Okay, then the next one is Josie stood barefoot on the cool wooden floor of her apartment, a string of fairy lights clutched in one hand and a half-empty bag of rose petals in the other. The room was a chaos of romance, candles flickering on every surface, heart-shaped balloons bobbing lazily near the ceiling, and a faint haze of vanilla-scented mist lingering in the air. It definitely got the assignment that this should be very, very kitschy and romantic. Looking at the content, just paused. Oh god, I like this. This is my Hallmark movie. Okay. Okay, I really like this third version. Or does anyone prefer another version? Maybe you will get all of them to read, but I kind of like the humor it pulled in. Overkill. Chill night. It's not chill. Okay, so now that I've settled for one version of this little thing, I can put it in. And there's also this. Oh, Manon?
Yeah, we have someone who says she tried it, but he did not follow our story Bible or link at all on the chapter summary. So Thomas asked if it showed a chiclet for the chapter summary.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to go over now anyway. Let's see. Here at the top, you see the so-called chiclets. These chiclets tell you which cards were pulled in. And as I've mentioned before, I hadn't followed my own example. The main character is called Josie Wilkins, and because somewhere in the cards, in the chapter summary, it says that the main character is Josie Wilkins, and her, I think, mother and sister were also pulled in. Well, since this is just an example, it's not that important. And this is the one world building card we have. And here you see that the outline chapter was read and jaw-written style. So usually it should read and respect what's in the outline. But for example, in this here, her boyfriend shows up, which he isn't supposed to be doing in the first chapter. So depending on how much creative license you gave to the AI, it may still come up with something that's only vaguely like the stuff you're asked for. If you use this and have a chapter linked and it doesn't work, I would send in a bug report. And you can always thumb down the result you got. Like in this case, I would thumb down this one because it ignored that he's not even that's in the scene, he's only mentioned. But I like the other ones both, so they would get thumb up. And if you like a version, you can also I'm not hitting the star right. Let's see. You have this little panel where you can see favorited cards, but somehow I'm unable to hit the little star correctly. Maybe that's also a bug. I'll jot this down so that I can complain to Michael about this. But you usually should be able to favorite something if you like it a lot. You can also insert it with this little button here, or you can copy the text if you want to save it in a different document. And if you really dislike something, you can also delete it. But I don't like deleting words that I don't need. Therefore, my history is always very cluttered. But anyways, you can see here, the text that we have inserted is purple. That means that it hasn't been edited yet, which is a good way to see whether some text is still the version, the unedited AI version, and which parts of the text you have already edited. And this here is a little formatting error by DeepSeek. It's marked on it. It should be. Is a chill night in, or rather, since you usually don't, it's italics. My Hallmark movie. And as you just saw, the moment I changed something in here, it went to be black. Okay. So this is how I like to start off my chapters, giving the reins to Auto-Write to give me a beginning. Once I have my the hook for my chapter, I switch to guided write and use more detailed prompts. And for this, already prepared this document with guided write prompts. And the write prompts that I use always follow the same structure. And essentially, I reinforce the POV I'm in. Then I write, show how my, like something like show, or begin with, like how my characters do stuff and things. Honestly, what would happen if I would put this in there? Maybe if we have time at the end. Then in brackets, I put further instructions if necessary. Stuff like use active voice, prefer showing over telling. If I want to put the focus on something, I also use this for it. And stuff for context, I often just put into parentheses. I'm not sure if it actually makes a difference for the AI, but I prefer for myself to see the difference if it's some more meta instruction to have it in brackets, and if it's more related to the backstory, the text itself, to have it in parentheses. But that's all just, you can experiment a lot with this yourself. Okay. Now, what's the minute? Yeah. These are the beats that I generated for the scene. And as we can see, it put a lot of content into the first few things. That's what everything was perfect. And I feel like these beats didn't come off as well as they usually do, but we can work with this. This should be approximately where we left off. Just like Josie's POV. Show how Tessa listens patiently. That way. I have to make sure which is this. Which version did we choose? Ah, this one. Good. Yikes. A testament with her romantic ideals. Okay, something like show her patiently offering to everything. Definitely. Show asking, show Josie ring if I forgot the boyfriend's name. I don't know. Eric will propose. something along those lines. And then you could add something like focus Josie's, nicht Rosé, not Rosé, Josie's giddiness. Giddiness? This kind of looks wrong, but I just hope it will understand. And when I switch to guided write, I usually go down to only one card and to least, since I wanted to listen more closely to what I have in mind. Ah, okay. Now it will write us a new card. And as you can see here, it didn't finish the sentence. Some models are really good at just picking this up and finishing it. And as I see, this one's also good at this. If it ever happens that it does not actually pick up, you can go and ask Quick Chat to finish this little part for you. And I see, looking at the clock, that we're already only 5 minutes left. Are there any questions in the chat?
Once the video is over, we're going to try to help our friend there, Cherry.
Okay, that's good. Anything else? It doesn't look like it. Okay, so we have our second card.
There's one question.
Questions.
I want to know what are the best way to add dialogue.
Well, the best way to add dialogue would be to ask for dialogue, actually. You can put something like
Dialogue
I
driven.
think was dialogue driven here into the style box. Like here we have focus on dialogue, and that helps a lot. Like you see, there is quite a lot of dialogue in here. And dialogue driven is also a good keyword to use. How well it works also depends a little bit on the prose mode you're using. But as you can see here, this is a very chatty model. And something like with sharp banter might also help if you have something like this in your genre box. Oh my, this is getting... Poor girl is setting herself up for disappointment. But it looks like we only have 3 minutes left. And we got through everything I wanted to address. And if there are no other questions left, that would be the end of the workshop. And at this point, I just want to thank you all for being here and joining the workshop. And you'll get a last call for questions before we wrap this up. So feel free to raise your hands and type your questions in the chat, and I'll try to cover as many as I can in the last minutes we have left. It's not, we can still go a little bit over. That's no problem. But if there are no questions, I want to extend a special thanks to my two co-hosts, Mars and Manon, for their amazing support today. And of course, thank you all once more for your curiosity and engagement and all the great questions you posed. I can't wait to see how you will use these tools in your writing, and wish you happy writing and hope to see you soon.